Agnetha Fältskog embodied the very image of a Nordic goddess, tall, blonde, and beautiful with a magnificent voice. Music. That's why it's so surprising that love became the greatest source of turmoil in her life. What really lay behind the collapse music of her marriage to Björn Ulvaeus, and how did it ultimately lead to the breakup of ABBA? All of that will be revealed in this video. Music. When it comes to Agnetha's love life, her relationship with Björn always seemed to overshadow everything else. And how could it not? He wasn't music, just her lover, but also her business partner and creative collaborator. When their love was strong, the band thrived. When they broke up, ABBA eventually dissolved. The importance of that relationship is undeniable. However, Björn was not the only man to step into Agnetha's life. Before diving into her story with him, we need music to ask, who were the men who shaped and at times broke her heart before he appeared? Agnetha's first public romance was with a young man named Björn Lilia. At the time, she was just 17 or 18. Fragile, passionate, and full of yearning. They loved the way young people often do, quickly, intensely, music, and with absolute trust. But like so many youthful romances, it proved fragile. When they parted ways, Agnetha was left devastated. Instead of hiding her pain, she poured it into the song Jag är så kär. I was so in love. The tender melody, the lyrics filled with longing, and her clear yet trembling voice left a deep impression on the public. From that moment on, people began to notice. Agnetha had the rare ability to transform heartbreak into art, and it would become her path to the spotlight. But that first heartbreak was only the beginning. Not long after, Agnetha entered a very different kind of relationship. This time with German songwriter and producer Dieter Zimmermann. Unlike her youthful romance, this music one was marked by calculation and ambition. They became engaged quickly, and Zimmermann persuaded her to move to Germany to advance her career. On paper, it seemed like a promising turning point, a bigger market, more opportunities, and the backing of a future husband. But reality proved far harsher. In Germany, Agnetha was not welcomed the way she had hoped. Producers were unmoved by her emotional voice. Instead, they tried to mold her into something different, rigid, packaged, and alien to who she truly music was. They pushed her to sing commercial pop songs, stripping away her individuality. Zimmermann, though well-intentioned, was powerless to shield her from the demands of the music industry. Agnetha gradually realized that love alone was not enough to keep her there, especially when her career. The other thing she longed for was slipping into deadlock. And so, with rare courage music for someone so young, she broke off the engagement, left Germany behind, and returned music to Sweden. It was a decision both painful and liberating, one that affirmed she music would never trade her true self for false glory. And then destiny truly began to unfold. Back home, Agnetha met Björn Ulvaeus. Their first encounter in 1968 was unremarkable. They were just young musicians still trying to find their place. At the time, Björn was a member of the popular folk group, the Hutany Singers. They met again in 1969 and slowly began collaborating on songwriting. Those sessions, hours spent at the piano with pen and paper, laid the foundation for a relationship that would grow music, far beyond music. At the same time, their circle of acquaintances began to expand. Björn was closely connected with Benny Andersson, while Agnetha grew increasingly music, close to Annie Fred Lyngstad. And so, four young, talented, music, and creatively driven individuals found one another. None of them could have known that this meeting would give birth to one of the greatest bands of all time, ABBA. Within this setting, love between Agnetha and Björn blossomed naturally. Music. They were drawn to each other's talent, sensitivity, and kindred spirits. Their harmony extended not only to music, but also to their private lives. Before long, their relationship quickly moved from dating to marriage. On July 6, 1971, their wedding took place. Simple yet deeply emotional. No outside performer, music, was needed. Björn himself sat down at the organ and played music for his own wedding ceremony. This marked the beginning of a relationship that was at once music, romantic, creative, and rooted in business partnership. The other members of ABBA, Annie Fältskog and Benny Music, were no strangers to romance either. They lived together for many years before deciding to marry in 1978, Music, right at the height of ABBA's fame. But only 2 years later, their marriage ended, coinciding with the breakdown of Agnetha Music and Björn's relationship. A double blow that ultimately led to ABBA's collapse. To understand why Agnetha and Björn's love fell apart, it must be seen within the larger picture. 4 people who were not only life partners, but also artistic collaborators, Music, building an immortal musical legacy together. They were bound not just on stage but also in their daily lives, living together, touring together, and constantly facing the overlapping tensions of work and personal life. For Agnetha and Björn in particular, the bond was even tighter. Music, because of their 2 young children, Linda, born in 1973, and Peter, born in 1977. That made their separation far more devastating than Annie Fältskog and Benny's. As it wasn't just about love and music. Family responsibilities were deeply entangled as well. In the 1970s, ABBA became a source of national pride. With record sales, world tours, music, and global influence, they ranked just behind Volvo on Sweden's export value list. From the outside, they seemed to embody perfect success. 4 beautiful, music, talented, wealthy, and famous individuals. Yet, the glittering spotlight couldn't hide the cracks in their private lives. Agnetha and Björn grew increasingly distant. The constant, presence of work left them with no personal space to nurture their love. Meanwhile, Benny sank deeper into alcohol, a reality Annie could no longer endure. What began as faint fractures slowly turned into irreparable breaks. Even so, because of ABBA's immense importance to Sweden's global image, the group tried to maintain professionalism. They continued to perform on stage, record in the studio, and smile in public as if nothing were wrong. But the very conflict between broken personal lives and professional duty gave their music even greater emotional depth. Personal tragedy became the raw material for timeless music songs. Björn once admitted that Knowing Me Knowing You was written when he realized his marriage to Agnetha was ending. And when the separation finally happened, The Winner Takes It All was born. A song that brought the world to tears. It might sound like fiction, but it was their reality. Music became their confessional. The place where they stored the pain they could not express openly. For Agnetha, the collapse of her marriage left not only an emotional scar, but also a lasting psychological shock. She had to seek therapy to get through those paralyzing months. The wound cut even deeper when Björn quickly went public with a new relationship just shortly after their split. For a woman as sensitive as Agnetha, it felt like a dagger to her self-esteem. She fell into a creative crisis. Songwriting no longer came naturally and performing lacked its former energy. She once admitted that there were moments when she felt completely drained, torn between wanting to escape the spotlight and being unable to let it go. It took many years before she could look back on this period with a more positive mindset. In her memoir, she revealed that she eventually came to be grateful to Björn for turning their breakup into a song. After ABBA broke up, each member went their own way. Annie Fältskog became royalty. Benny overcame his battle with alcoholism. And Björn entered other happy relationships. In fact, in 2020, at the age of 75, Björn even admitted that he was still having sex 4 times a week. But what about Agnetha? In matters of love, life continued to test her. It took nearly 10 years after her split with Björn before Agnetha dared to open her heart again. Yet, fans only learned about her next relationship after it had already ended. This time, after experiencing such a public romance, Agnetha chose to seek peace in a discreet relationship. But even privacy couldn't save it. In 1990, after just 6 months of dating, she married Dr. Thomas Sonnenfeld. However, only 3 years later, they divorced. Fans had no idea about the marriage itself. Only the divorce made the news, leaving everyone baffled. Since then, both the press and fans have tried to uncover what really happened, but both sides have remained silent. Thomas went on with his career as a surgeon in Sweden, while Agnetha has hardly ever written or spoken about the relationship. The tragedy didn't stop there. Not long after this marriage ended, Agnetha's life was struck by devastating loss. Her mother leapt from a balcony, ending her own life. The shock plunged Agnetha into deep depression. Just a year later, her father also passed away, compounding the grief. It seemed as if life was determined not to give her a moment's peace. At that point, Agnetha was so broken music that she stopped recording altogether, and dating was out of the question. Yet, with time and therapy, she slowly began to find light again. Eventually, Agnetha felt ready to give love, music, another chance. She hoped her next relationship would be the final safe harbor. But, as you might guess, things once again didn't turn out the way she had hoped. In 1997, Agnetha fell into yet another precarious relationship with Guy van der Graaf, music, a Dutch forklift driver. GE was no stranger. Music. In fact, he had been obsessed with Agnetha for years, first as a fanatic fan. Letters, music, unexpected appearances, relentless harassment, all were warning signs of danger. But with her mind still deeply wounded, Agnetha's music natural defenses gradually crumbled. She began to tolerate his presence, eventually turning it, music, into a strange relationship that lasted nearly 2 years. When she finally realized the truth that this was not love, but simply exploitation of her vulnerability, music, Agnetha tried to end it. But for GE, the end was never an option. He became music, a stalker in every sense of the word, lurking around Agnetha's estate in Sweden. Every time she stepped outside, she felt the weight of unseen eyes following her. Fearing music for her safety, Agnetha had no choice but to turn to the law. And for the first time, music, justice stood by her side. A Swedish court issued a restraining order and deported GE back to the Netherlands. It seemed like the nightmare was over, but in reality, it was only the beginning. In the Netherlands, GE waited patiently. Years later, in 2003, music, he secretly returned to Sweden. His purpose wasn't to work, but to continue stalking and threatening Agnetha. When he was, music, discovered, the court took harsher action. This time, he was banned from entering Sweden altogether. Yet, ironically, that ban lasted only 2 years. By 2005, once the restriction expired, GE reappeared near Agnetha's home. The police spotted him, but he managed to escape. From then on, fear never left the singer. The haunting sense that at any moment, anywhere, music, her stalker, could show up. As if to make things even crueler, GE began music, reinventing himself as a public figure. He published a memoir about his so-called love story with Agnetha, portraying music himself as a misunderstood man. Oh, and instead of siding with the victim, the media fed on the story with endless curiosity. Agnetha, music, already deeply scarred, was once again forced to see her past torn open on the front pages. Her outrage reached its peak in 2023 when Amazon Prime announced a series centered on Guy van der Graaf. To Agnetha, it was nothing short of a slap in the face. The man who, music, had terrorized her, stalked her, and turned her life into a nightmare was now given an international stage to tell his version of events. In rare statements, she called GE a lifelong danger and openly, music, condemned the legitimization of a stalker's name. But the media remained indifferent to her, music, personal pain. The show aired regardless, reopening wounds Agnetha had long struggled to heal. After all this, Agnetha no longer wished for her love life to be public fodder. Following a string of failed relationships, from Bjorn to Thomas Sonnenfeld, music, to the nightmare named GE, she chose silence. Instead of chasing loud love stories, she turned to therapy, music, spending millions to heal her inner scars. Years later, fans came to see a different Agnetha. Music, quiet, private, but more at peace than ever before. Music. The question lingers. Is she secretly dating someone now? Perhaps the answer no longer matters. After everything, discretion is not selfishness. Music. It is her only shield. Some fans may feel disappointed at music, the absence of romantic tales. But in the end, Agnetha devoted her youth to music. And now the right to enjoy the rest of her life in peace belongs entirely, music, to her. The love life of Agnetha Fältskog, with its sweet beginnings, broken marriages, tragic losses, and the shadow of a stalker, proves that not every legend ends in a fairy tale. Yet, it is precisely music, these experiences, that make her story one of the most haunting and unforgettable personal journeys in the history of music. Heat. Hey. Music.